In Spanish, the Bible doesn't say in the beginning was the Word. It says in the beginning was the Verb, and the Verb was with God, and the Verb was God. And I just think that is beautiful that Jesus was an action word. you know, and so I feel like if that's sort of part of Jesus's essence was movement and always doing and encountering and engaging and saving. And so if we're called to be Christ-like, which we are, then that has to be part of it. We're out there doing things, and a mission trip is just one of the many things that I think we're called to do. And we talk a lot about Acts 1:8 and being called to be Christ's witnesses in Jerusalem, which is sort of at home for us, and throughout Judea and Samaria and to the ends of the earth. Those are some of the very last words that Jesus spoke to the disciples before he left them. And I guess he was probably being pretty careful with the words he was choosing at that point, and that's what he decided. After 3 years with these guys and everything we've been through and everything we've seen and done and experienced together, this is what I want to make sure they hear from me before I leave. And it's the church has to be present anywhere that there's need, and sometimes that means right there in your backyard and wherever USA you happen to be, and sometimes it means to the ends of the earth, which for us is where we are in Costa Rica.
It's not just an option from my perspective for a Christ follower to be involved in mission, but it's a part of what it means to be a follower of Jesus Christ. I think often of Matthew 25, where the parable is told by Jesus of a king gave drink to the thirsty whenever you were hospitable to the stranger, whenever you gave clothing to the naked, whenever you did all of these sorts of things, when you took care of the sick, when you visited those in prison, then you were doing it to me.
Sometimes we get teams that'll come down to work with us for the first time, and I'll ask them during the week, tell me about the local outreach that you guys do at your church. And every once in a while, it's just blank stares and crickets chirping. And I think
there are some churches, particularly new churches, who will say things like, before we go outside the doors of our church to serve with a community or with a community that we've partnered with, let's make sure we have everything right on the inside of the building. So let's make sure we have a big enough building. Let's make sure there's enough money. Let's make sure the congregation is big enough. Let's make sure that the leadership is on board. Let's make sure that the font and the bulletin looks just right. Let's figure out what we're doing inside the building before we leave the building and go out in service into the world. Now, the problem with that is service is the point of church. You can't have church without service. You can't have church without going out the doors of your church and serving with your neighbors. Church is more than just an hour a week on Sunday. Church is something that should transform your whole life. It should help you overcome your fears, your prejudices. It should help motivate you to go and build God's kingdom here on this earth. And so if you're not in service, then you simply aren't being a church. You'll notice Jesus and the disciples very rarely will stay still. They are always moving. They are always meeting new people and listening and talking and healing and preaching and teaching. They are always constantly on the move. Very rarely do they stay in one synagogue or temple or town for a very long time. And there is a very good reason for that. So if we aren't leaving the doors of our church, if we aren't getting out into the world and serving with our neighbors, then we simply aren't being a church.
When we serve, we are in some ways connecting with Christ through the other person. When we are in service, when we are in mission, we may see Christ in deeper ways than we see him at other times. It also can help us to grow beyond our comfort.
I signed up for that largely because there were a lot of pretty girls going on the trip. And while I was there, had this amazing experience with community in service. It felt like, I'd done some small group types of stuff at my church before, but it felt like a small group that had met for a couple of years compacted into about 10 days. And we'd done regular meetings in preparation for that. But it was actually on that trip that I was telling a friend about it just yesterday, that I had a kind of a calling experience where we were being approached by we'd gone to the market to buy food or buy trinkets. It was that point in the week. And, I'd bought some souvenirs. We were to meet back at the van, and the person with the keys was late for our meeting time. And so we had all these beggars starting to show up, people, and sometimes people will break their children's arms and let them mend in that fashion. At least at this time in Port-au-Prince, Haiti, they were doing that. And so deformed limbs and it was very difficult. And I just start giving away my purchases and then what money I had left. And then I take off my hat and then my shirt, my shoes, and I'm ready to take off my shorts and do a St. Francis kind of run naked into the woods thing. And the guy with the keys showed up. We got on the van, and I'm sitting in the van in just my shorts and saying to God, you could give your whole life to address this kind of poverty and only knock a dent in it. And my sense of God's response was, Doug, I ask nothing less.